Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Today what we are going to do is we're going to replace the rear coil springs on a 2000 Toyota 4Runner SR5 four-wheel drive. The reason for this is it's my vehicle. I do have an option to go aftermarket and maybe lift the vehicle a little bit, but I'm choosing just to replace my OEM springs with new OEM springs. And some people have claimed, like in the Toyota forums, that this part number, the 48231-35210, is the tallest available spring for the third gen years. This actually is for a 99 with 16-inch wheels, but the problem is when I look up the part online at Camelback Toyota, with my vehicle with 16-inch springs, it's the same exact part number. So what I'm believing is going to happen is that I'm basically replacing my OEM springs with the same spring, and I'm not going to really get any additional lift, but what I'm looking for is to restore my truck to stock height. And I've taken a measurement from the bottom of the fender flare to the tire. In each side, the distance between the tire and the fender flare was 4 5/8. So, and I also took a measurement from the ground, and the ground on my garage is a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch higher on the passenger side. But that's what I'm going to be using as a reference. Once we get the new springs in, I'll drive it, maybe get everything to settle, pull back into the driveway or into the garage, and then take another measurement to see what this thing actually did. Was it worth it, or maybe it was a waste of time, a waste of money? The other thing we're going to do is when I put my Bilstein aftermarket shocks on my rig last year, it came with these rubber bushings, and I never really liked them that much, so I bought a kit from Energy Suspension, and I'm going to replace the top bushings, and then these are the ones that go into the lower part of the shock. And today what we're using as a reference, again, like usual, we're using the factory service manual. This is for a 2000 Toyota 4Runner. We are again in the suspension and axle area, and it describes how to remove the coil springs and the rear shock absorbers. The first thing that you're supposed to do, you're supposed to jack up the vehicle, as high as you can get it, lower it onto some good heavy-duty jack stands onto the frame. I'm using 6-ton jack stands. I have the parking brake released so it doesn't give us any resistance. And then I have one set of the one front wheel chocked front and rear so the vehicle can't move fore and aft. And right now we have the hydraulic jack underneath the rear end. We're supporting it so we can remove the parking brake cable bracket and the shock absorbers. And then once that's done, we can lower it to where the weight of the rear end is going to bring the suspension down, and we'll be able to get the springs out. What I paid for these, so again, I use Camelback Toyota, great online parts distributor. I paid 174 bucks. The parts were 171, and they charge you a very, very nominal fee for freight, 3 bucks. That's a great online seller of parts for Toyota 4Runners. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, according to the factory service manual, is we're going to remove this bracket that holds the parking brake cable onto the third member using a 12 millimeter, super easy to get loose. And now I'm just going to put this bolt back in, and now this parking brake cable is free, so when we lower the rear end, it's not going to give us any additional resistance, so we could flex to get the springs out. The next step is to remove the bottom bolt for the shock on each side. The bottom bolt to remove the shock off the lower mount is a 17 millimeter. I'm using just about a foot long breaker bar, and I'm just showing you with this conventional tool, so you can do it with regular tools, and then I'm just going to do the other side with my impact. And that came off really easily. I didn't even need a breaker bar. Okay, just remember the orientation. The concave side faces the head of the bolt. I guess, what is that? Convex side faces the bushing. So just remember that. That's a little concave right there. So you remember the orientation. And then you can just pull it off the mount, wiggle it a little bit. Fighting me, but the shock is fighting me a little bit. So I'm just using this little mini Prybar, and I'm prying against the bracket that holds the shock onto the third member, and I'm just prying against that. And I'm prying, not prying against the shock body, but prying against the mount, the washer, and just giving it a little bit of a push to come off. And the reason why this thing is falling out right now is I already went ahead and removed the top nut, which on these trucks is the hardest thing I've done yet, is getting up there with a wrench. And the gear wrenches that are ratcheting are the way to go. You showing a gear wrench? So the way this Bilstein one works is that you can get with the gear wrench on there on the nut, which sits on here, and then you have to have a 5mm Allen wrench on top to hold the spindle from the shock from spinning while you're doing that. So you get the 5mm Allen wrench wedged up against the frame, and then you can get your gear wrench or other brand type of ratcheting, and then you can take the nut off. You know, without one of these, it's really hard work. With open-head wrench, it's like a nightmare, and I actually did that. So you could see the Allen head. That's a 5mm Allen head, but that's specific to these Bilstein shocks that I added.
So it could be different on other applications.
Yeah. Okay, so we have both shock absorbers out. Both shock absorbers are out. Now we're going to lower the rear end and see how much movement we get here. This is the brake line. Make sure we keep an eye on that. So there's not really, you can see there's not a bunch of tension on that. I've seen some write-ups where they say to remove all these brackets so you don't damage them, but there's still a lot of movement there. So hopefully when we're moving the rear end around to get the springs out, we're not going to be pulling on this, but we're going to keep an eye on it. So I just put a little bit of pressure, actually kind of put my weight on, put my butt on here, and pull it out. Wasn't that hard. The end right here, it goes against here. You could see that it would want to rest right up against there. So when you put it back in, you just got to remember you get the right orientation. I'm going to clear some of this dirt out of here, and we'll put the new spring in. Okay, we got the old spring out, which this is one right here, and this is the new spring. Looking at the color coding, the old one was color coded blue and lime green. The one that I got as a replacement is red and lime green. Comparing the height of my 16-year-old spring, it is about 15 1/8. 15 1/8 to the top right here. And then let's see what this one's at. This thing is about 16 1/4, right around there, 16 1/4. So basically getting 1 1/8 inch, right? Either my spring, I didn't have the same springs that I thought I did when the original owner bought the rig with 16-inch wheels. So I think I stand to be corrected, unless these just sagged over time, and now by going back to new springs, I'm gaining 1 1/8. Mad lift. I'm gonna be rock crawling like crazy now. When you order these springs, there's not a separate part number for left and right or driver's side and passenger side. They're both the same part number. It doesn't really matter which spring you bring out of the box. In the orientation, you put the pump stop on there. I saw that mine still had the plastic on there. You can see that it had the plastic on there, so I'm not going to remove that. Leave that there. It's got some purpose. And then just plop that on there, and let's try to fit it in. Fit it in. I think it's easier to get it out than it is to get it in, huh? Let's see. Pull on it, pull down on it. I had to use my weight. We decided to remove the end link so we can get more movement out of the rear end, and I think that's the ticket. Now I can move this pretty easily. There we go. Twist it. Okay, so that's in there. If you have a friend, it makes it a lot easier. If you're by yourself, you'd have to probably fight it a little more, but I'm sure you'd be able to get it. Okay, with the end link out, this is going to pull out real easy. I just want to show you that This brake line is getting tight, but even when I'm flexing it, I could still have a little bit of movement, so I'm not too fearful that I'm going to rip this line or damage it. So you just push down a little bit, it pops right out with the sway bar, end links disconnected. That came out super easy. Clean this up. Just going to clean out some of the debris out of here, the dirt. Clean it while you're here. Just using some simple green. Clean a little bit of the upper part too. So if you're going to use polyurethane bushings, you should lubricate it with something. A good lubricant for it is some silicone paste. Mission Automotive makes this product. So I'm just going to put some on the washer, the bottom washer first, and then put some on the bottom here. And everywhere basically it makes contact with metal, it could possibly squeak. Get a little on the inside diameter, because the one thing about polyurethanes, they're known to squeak. So the orientation is the concave faces up. So you put the washer on first, put the flat side of the bushing on. This one for the bushing for managed suspension has like a little raised, like, I don't know what you call it, nipple on it, and so that goes towards the bottom of the truck. Then the washer goes here. We got the next washer. This is not the highest quality washer, but it's the one that came with the Bilstein shocks. It's a little bit bent, but it's still going to work. So that slides on, and with the little raised lip towards the underside of the truck. So that's ready to install. So we're replacing the bottom ones too on these Bilsteins. So just lubing up everywhere with this Mission Automotive silicone paste, where it's going to make metal to metal contact so it doesn't squeak. Some on the internal diameter here. Like so. Now, get this shock in here. Make sure the orientation of this washer is, it's the concave side, this side, towards the bracket, end of the bracket, and the curved or convex side goes towards the bushing. So that's how it came off. And I'm just pushing, compressing the shock, putting it on there. And then I'm gonna put a little more. Oops, sliding on me. Let's get this. A little bit on here in this washer first. Okay. Same thing on the other one. It's the concave side towards the head of the bolt, the curved or convex side towards the bushing. Start it by hand. And that's in there. Okay. The fun one is up above. The bottom shock bolt, according to the factory service spec, is 47 foot-pounds. That's it. So for the upper mount, since it's so hard to get to, you really can't torque that one down. I used a 17 millimeter ratcheting wrench with a 5 millimeter Allen wrench on the top to hold the spindle while I was tightening, and so I just tightened it down to it was pretty snug, that the bushing was smushed down some, and I called it good. We got both shock absorbers in, torqued them to spec, at least the bottom bolts we torqued to spec. We reattached the end links, tightened those nuts down. We didn't bother torquing those. We didn't torque those. We just tightened them down to where the bushings were snug. And now we jacked up the vehicle, took the weight off the jack stands, got the jack stands out of the way, and we got the wheels on. And started the lug nuts by hand. Now we're torquing them. You'll see some conflicting stuff in the factory service manual, how much you torque these. And we're doing it to 85 foot-pounds. We had the parking brake loose earlier, but now we don't have to do that. Just making sure it all tightened down to where I'm not getting any movement out of the lug nut anymore when it clicks. The bracket, the parking cable bracket is 9 foot-pounds. I'm not worrying about that. I just got a 12 millimeter on there, cinched it up tight. But if you want to follow the torque spec for that, if you're worried about it, it's 9 foot-pounds. We finally got it all back together. We lowered it down to the ground. We took our final measurement from the tire to the bottom of the fender flare, and it is now right at about 6 inches, maybe 5 and 15/16. We're calling it 6 inches. And the old number, if you remember, was 4 5/8 for that distance. We gained maybe a little less than 1.5 inches. And they say size doesn't matter, but in the truck world, size does matter. Thanks for watching, and we will be back with more videos for you to enjoy. Thank you.